Shalom Akayams, back again. Hebrew Israelite Yakahana. First, let's give all praises to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah, Kodash, Tawada, Amen. Double honors to the elders of GMS, Great Millstone, and salutations to all the brothers on the highways and byways, bringing out the word in truth and spirit and sincerity in the name of Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakah, Kodash, Tawada, Amen. Shalom Akayams. Today I want to talk a little bit about the Israelite Gentiles. We want to kind of go back into that again. We've done this, we've made many videos on the Gentiles, and we want to kind of go back into it again to give people an understanding who the Gentiles are, right? Because as we always said before, there is two types of Gentiles in the Bible. There are Israelite Gentiles and there are heathen Gentiles. And in the Bible and the scriptures, if you have an understanding of the scriptures, it quite clearly speaks about who those are. And one of the first things I like to say, you know, people like to go to the scripture, there's neither Jew nor Greek. I think it's Galatians. Let's quickly just put it out here. Let's quickly pull it out. And let's see. Jew. So there's neither Jew nor Greek, right? Galatians 3:28. So when they go to that scripture, they say Galatians chapter 3 verse 28. All right, this is the first thing they pull out. All right, this is the ignorance of your plantation Christianity and your Catholic churches and all your different denominations of the Bible, all those different denominations of Christianity calling themselves Christian, because as you know, the word Christian means Israelite. The Israelites were first called what? Christians in Antioch. They were the followers of Yahweh Shai. Those who the Christians were, that the Bible speaks of. So this is what your so-called Catholic church or Protestant church or your plantation Christianity will say. This is the first thing that they will say. They'll go to Galatians chapter 3 verse 28. And they say there is neither Jew nor Greek. There is neither bond nor free. There is neither male nor female. For ye are all one in Yahweh Shai Mashiach. Now, why would the Lord only say there's neither Jew nor Greek? Why would he only choose the Greeks? Because if that was actually referring to the so-called Greeks, then on that particular verse there, in Galatians 3:28, that means he's only coming to deliver the Jews, the Israelites, and the Greeks. It don't make no sense. So the first thing you have to do is work out, what does that word mean? What does that word mean in Galatians 3:28? What does that word mean? Right? In the book of Colossians 3:11, chapter 3 verse 11, when it says, where there is neither Greek nor Jew, circumcision nor uncircumcision, barbarian, Scythian, bond nor free, but Yahweh Shai is all and in all. Right? Why would he only mention certain nations? It doesn't make any sense at all. Because the word Greek that is there means Helen. Right? That's what the word means. It means Helen. It means the Hellenized Jews, the Jews that were Hellenized by Antiochus the Great. And sorry, not Antiochus the Great, Antiochus Epiphanes. All right. So when you look up the word Greek here, when you go into the blue letter and you look up the word Greek, it says what? Helen. Helen are Jews that were Greeks. Now, it says here, just so you know, because we're not going to pull no wool over your eyes. This is where we say that you got to, when you're dealing with the blue letter, you got to know when it's showing you a truth or when it's not. It says the first explanation it says here in the blue letter, right? It says a Greek either by nationality, whether a native of the mainland or of the Greek islands or colonies. All right. Now, to be Hellenized was to become a Greek, was to be taught their ways, dress like them, eat their food, and eventually you start worshipping their gods, Zeus, Jupiter, Hades, so forth and so on, right? That's when you become Hellenized, right? And then it's the second explanation it says here. It says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews. So, it says Read it again. This is what it says in the blue letter, right? Just to show you that you must understand. If you don't know the scriptures diligently, you will read things in the blue letter without knowing that it's gone off in certain places. Because we say this again, there are certain places in the blue letter where it goes off when it's explaining what a particular word means. And the only way you can find that out is when you do your due diligence. And that's what we do. We do our due diligence. So it says here, it says, in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, right? That made the language, customs, and learning of the Greek their own, right? It says primary reference is to a difference of religion and worship. So this explanation here, this is what it's telling you. It's telling you that the Greeks, the so-called Greeks, Antiochus, went and colonized and Hellenized everyone else, every other place except Israel. This is what it's telling you. But yet, historical history makes it quite clear. Secular history makes it quite clear that Antiochus did Hellenize, did invade and take over Israel, parts of Israel, right? Ptolemy also conquered parts of Israel, but it was Antiochus that came and colonized Jerusalem, Judea, and different cities in Israel, right? And Hellenized the Israelites. That's what the book of the Maccabees is about. The book of the Maccabees is about the wars that the Maccabean brothers, right, and their fathers, I think their father's name was Matthias, went to war, drew righteous men out of Israel to go to war against the Greeks, because what was being done to their children, to their women, and to their menfolk, those that weren't killed and raped and murdered, were forcefully enslaved and Hellenized. And the Bible speaks about that. So this is why we know that when it says here, when it says there is neither Jew nor Greek, when it says there is neither Jew nor Greek, where is it again? Galatians 3:28. It says there's neither Jew nor Greek, nor bond nor free. It's not talking about the actual Greeks. It's talking about the Jews, the Israelites that were Hellenized, right? That took on the Greek customs. Because once again, the explanation here says in a white, this is what it says here in the blue letter, right? When you look up the word Greek and it shows you it means Hellen, which means the Hellenized, right? It says in a wider sense, the name embraces all nations, not Jews, that made the language, customs, and learning of the Greeks their own. So he went and Hellenized everyone else but Israel. That's a lie. And I'm going to make it show you quite clear to you in the scriptures, right? This is another major to how we know that the Israelites were Hellenized by these, that many Israelites were Hellenized by Antiochus Epiphanes, by the Greeks. So it says here, we're going to pull out a precept in 1 Corinthians. So in the book of 1 Corinthians, right, chapter 12, the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1, it says, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, this is Paul's writing, it's Paul speaking. Now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. So Paul's making it quite clear to the Israelites. This is why he was the apostle of the Gentiles. He went to bring the word of Yahushua to the Israelite Gentiles, not to any heathen Gentiles, not to any people of any other nations that were not Israelites, that forefathers or ancestors were Israelites. He only went to deal with the Israelite Gentiles, those that had lost their culture, their tongue, their laws, commandments and statutes, right? So it says here, so 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 1, it says, now concerning spiritual gifts, right? It says, brethren, I would not have you ignorant, right? Ye know that ye were what? Gentiles carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led. So even Paul know that they were Gentiles carried away into these dumb idols, even as you were led, which means you were forced, right? That's when he says that even as you were forced into these beliefs, into these religions. How did this happen? So for Paul to write this down in the book of Corinthians, he must have an understanding and knowledge and know how this actually happened, right? Paul must have known and read and know about the history of his people to know how they were led and carried away unto these dumb idols, and that they were considered Gentiles. And that's why he was sent unto them, because he knew that when he went to the Corinthians, that those Corinthians that he went to were Israelite Corinthians. When he went to the Romans, those Romans were Israelite Romans. When he went to the Galatians, those Galatians were Israelite Galatians. When he went to the Ephesians, those Ephesians were Israelite Ephesians. Paul was not going to heathen Gentiles. He was not going to Gentiles that belonged to other nations. So how do we know that? We look in the scriptures. We search the scriptures to find out, why would Paul say this to them? Why would Paul say in the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 12 verse 1, now concerning spiritual gifts, brethren, I would not have you ignorant. You know that you were Gentiles, carried away. He's making it quite clear that they were forcefully led to become Gentiles, were carried away unto what? These dumb idols, even as you were led. So how did Paul know that? Where did he get that information from? So we're going to go to the book of Maccabees, because Paul knew about the story of the Maccabees. He knew about the story of the Maccabees, right? So first we're gonna start in the first book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 41. So we're going to start in the first book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 41. All right? So it says here, moreover, so the book of Maccabees, chapter 1, verse 41, the first book of Maccabees. It says, moreover, King Antiochus wrote to his whole kingdom, all right, listen carefully, that all should be one people, and everyone should leave his laws. So all the heathens agreed according to the commandment of the king. So he's made a declaration that they should all leave their laws, right? He's made it quite clear. He said that everyone should leave his laws, right? He says, yea, many also of the Israelites, listen carefully, many also of the Israelites consented to his religion, to become Hellenized now, all right? So he says here, and sacrifice what? Unto idols, and profane the Sabbaths. So what did Paul say? Paul made it quite clear. 1 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 2. He says, ye know that you were Gentiles. This is what Paul is saying, the Apostle Paul, right? That you were Gentiles, carried away unto these dumb idols, even as you were led. So what does the Maccabees, the book of Maccabees says, right? What is Matthias Maccabean says, Judas Maccabee? What are they saying in the book of the Maccabees? What are these prophets saying? They said here, 1 Maccabees chapter 1 verse 43. It says, yea, many also of the Israelites consented to what? To his religion, to be Hellenized. All right? Remember, we're talking about Antiochus. He's the king of Greece, right? Of Greco, right? And sacrifice unto idols, the same idols that Paul was referring to, and profane the Sabbaths. For the king had sent letters by messengers unto Jerusalem and the cities of Judah, that they should follow the strange laws of the land, right? And forbid burnt offerings and sacrifices and drink offerings in the temple, and that they should profane the Sabbath and festival days. So they've been told what they need to do now, right? It says, and pollute the sanctuary and holy people. It says, set up altars and groves and chapels of idols, and sacrifice swine, right? Which they know, these are all abominations to our laws. These are what the Greeks did, right? He said, and sacrifice swine's flesh and unclean beast, that they should also leave their children uncircumcised. They even wanted to leave their kids uncircumcised, right? And make their souls abominable. You hear that? And make their souls abominable with all manner of uncleanness and profanation, to the end they might forget, listen carefully, to the end they might forget the law and change all the ordinances. And whosoever would not do according to Antiochus' commandment of the king, he said he should die. So that's Antiochus telling you about the Maccabees, all right? We're just seeing some so-called Jews walking past here. So that's the first instance I'm going to show you there, right? That's how Paul knows that we were dealing with them. So we're going to get another precept out of here. We're going to go to the book of Ephesians. The book of Ephesians, where is it? Chapter 2, right? So this is Paul again. This is Paul writing to the Ephesians, and these Ephesians are Israelites, all right? So listen carefully again. The book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse, where we're going to start at? Verse 11, we're going to start at, right? So it says here, wherefore, remember that you, being in past times, were Gentiles in the flesh, who are called the uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh made by hands. So when he says you were called the uncircumcision, you were called Gentiles, you were called heathens by the circumcision. Those were the what they would call like the Israelites that knew they were Israelites, the ones that was in the truth. The ones that the Paul's referring to are the circumcision, were the Israelites, were the children of Israel, like your Pharisees, your Sadducees, those that lived in Judea, right, and still followed the laws, commandments and statutes, and never went over to following the ways of the Greeks, right? So those would have been the ones that maybe would have hid out, that was secretly following the laws, commandments and statutes right up until the day of Paul the Apostle. So this is why Paul says that. This is why the Pharisees back then hated the fact that Paul was going to these Ephesians and these Galatians and these Corinthians and these Romans, because they couldn't understand. Why is he going to them? Because they knew, the Pharisees knew these were the people that stopped following. They knew they were Israelites, the Pharisees and the Sadducees, right? The actual Jews in Israel knew that those Gentiles that Paul were going to were Israelites, but they knew that they had all become Greeks in their customs, in their ways, following the ways of the Greeks, dressing like them, speaking Greek, eating the food, doing abominations, not celebrating the Sabbath days or the feast days. So they knew that, who they were, and they were disgusted with that Paul was going to these people. But Paul knew who they were. That's why Paul was trying to explain to them, because even some of them had forgotten that they were Jews. They were so much, they had become Greeks and other nations by so much that a lot of them even forgotten that who they were. So he says there, he says, wherefore remember that being in times past you were Gentiles in the flesh, who were called the uncircumcision by that which is called the circumcision in the flesh by hands, right? It says that at the time you were without what? You were without Yahushua, he's saying to them. Being aliens, listen carefully, he says being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel. So they were aliens from the commonwealth of Israel. Why? Because they were following the laws of the Greeks. They dressed like the Greeks, talked like the Greeks, they ate the Greeks' food, they weren't celebrating none of the high holy days, right? And this was going on for several sort of generations. This was happening for, because remember the Maccabees and the times of Antiochus was around 164 to 175 BC when those wars were going on between the Maccabees brothers and Antiochus himself. It was around that time that was going on, all right? So he says there, he says, verse 12, so we're still in this book of Ephesians, chapter 2, verse 12. It says that at the time you were without Yahushua, being aliens from the commonwealth of Israel, being aliens from the 12 tribes, being alien from, well, it was only 3 tribes at the time back there in Israel, but being aliens from that commonwealth, because they called them Jews, because the majority of them were based in Judea, Jerusalem, all right? And strangers, it says there, and strangers from the covenants of the promises. So they forgot their ways. They became strangers from the covenant. What was the covenant? The covenant, what was made with the Israelites by the Lord. The promises was the land of Israel, right? And having no hope and without the Most High in the world. So they knew that. They totally knew that. Paul totally knew that they were strangers from the covenant and the promise of the Lord and the Most High, all right? And that they had taken on other beliefs and other religions, all right, and other saints. This is what they had done. So we're gonna go to the book of 2 Maccabees. 2 Maccabees. The book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 2 Maccabees chapter 5. Chapter 5 I want, chapter 6. We start with chapter 6. Second Maccabees chapter 6. We're going to Second Maccabees chapter 6. We're going to start at the top here so you can get a proper understanding of what was going on. Second Maccabees chapter 6, right? It says, not long after this, the king sent an old, so in the book of Second Maccabees chapter 6, verse 1, starting at the top. So it says, not long after this, the king sent an old man of Athens to compel the Jews, listen carefully, to depart from the laws of their fathers and not to live after the laws of the Most High, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem, and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus. They even wanted to rename Solomon's temple and call it the Jupiter of Olympus, all right? To show you how deep this is. These Israelite Gentiles, what happened to them and how they were converted, how they became Hellenized and how they became Greeks and followed the ways of the Greeks, right? This is to get a proper understanding. It says, so in verse 2 again, we start at the top of verse 2, right? It says, and to pollute also the temple in Jerusalem and to call it the temple of Jupiter Olympus, right? And that in Gerizim of Jupiter, the defender of strangers, as they did desire that dwell in the place, right? Verse 3. It says, the coming in of this mischief was sore and grievous to the people, right? For the temple was filled with riot and reveling, right? This is what was going on in Solomon's temple. This is what these dirty Greeks that had Hellenized the Israelites, this is what they was doing in Solomon's temple, right? So we're still in the book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 6, verse 4. It says, for the temple, right, was filled with riot and reveling by the Gentiles, right? So these Gentiles now, it's talking about the Greeks now, the actual Greeks, right? This is what they was doing in Solomon's temple. It says, who dallied with harlots and had to do with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful. As you know, that's what they did to defile the temple, right? And remember, this was spoken about in the book of Daniel, the desolation and the abomination in the book of Daniel, that this was going to happen. This was a prophecy that this was going to happen in where are we? Chapter 11. We'll quickly pull it out. I need to show you it before we go on. Where is it? It's in the book of Daniel. Here, chapter 12. So this was spoken about in the book of Daniel. This is a prophecy as well, spoken about in the book of Daniel. So in the book of Daniel, chapter 12, verse 11, all right? It says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away. That time that we're talking about is right now, that I'm reading about right now in the book of Maccabees, 2 Maccabees chapter 6. This is exactly what Daniel spoke of, right? This is a prophecy that Daniel spoke of that was going to happen during the time of the Maccabeans, right? During the time of King Antiochus Epiphanes, right? The son of Antiochus the Great, right? That's what they're called, the wicked one, right? It says, so the book of Daniel chapter 12 verse 11, it says, and from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days. All right. Blessed is he that waiteth and cometh to the 1,335 days. So it's spoken of in the book of Daniel. All right. Luke is also referred to in the book of Luke, in Luke 24. The book of Matthew. Matthew refers to this in Matthew's 24. In the book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse, what was it, 15? Verse 15. Right. The book of Matthew, chapter 24, verse 15. It says, when you therefore shall see the abomination and desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand. All right. So this is going. So go back to. What? Sorry, let me correct myself. We're speaking of here, I needed to go to Daniel's 11. I went to Daniel's 12. Let me correct myself, all right? It's Daniel's chapter 11 we needed to go to, all right? Just going to correct myself here. Daniel's chapter 11, verse 31, all right? And it says here, it says, we start at verse 30. It says, so in the book of Daniel, chapter 11, verse 30, it says, for the ships of Chittim shall come against him, all right? Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do. He shall even return and have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant, all right? Verse 31. So he says, and the arms shall stand on his part, right? And they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh it desolate. And such as do wickedly against the covenant shall be corrupt by flatteries, but the people that do know their power shall be strong and do exploits, right? And they that understand among the people shall instruct many, yet they shall fall by the sword and by the flame and by captivity and by the spoils many days. So this is what we're reading about right now in the book of Maccabees, all right? Just so I corrected myself there, all right? That's what we're reading about right now. What Matthews 24 and 15, it's talking about when the temple was ransacked by the Romans, right? In Matthew chapter 24, verse 15, when it says, when ye therefore shall see the abomination or desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet stand in the holy place, whoso readeth, let him understand, right? It says, then let him that which is in Judea flee into the mountains. That is talking about when the Romans did the abomination and desolation of the temple, all right? That's what that's talking about. So when I first spoke to you, I need to correct myself here. When I first spoke about Daniel chapter 12, verse 11, and from that time the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, and the abomination shall make it desolate, set up. There shall be 1,290 days. That's talking about when the Romans invaded the temple. That's talking about 70 AD, basically. All right. So I'm correct myself. At first, I said that was talking about Antiochus around 175 BC. That is not. That's talking about the Romans. That in Daniel chapter 12. That's talking about 70 AD. All right. In Daniel chapter 11. It's Daniel chapter 11, verse 31 to verse 34. It's talking about the time of Antiochus the Great, King Antiochus Epiphanes. What we're reading about here now in 2 Maccabees chapter 6. All right, this is what Daniel chapter 11, verse 31 to verse 34 is referring to. Right, that desolation and that pollution of the sanctuary, that is referring to Antiochus the Great, because it talks about the king of the north, which is Antiochus, the Seleucid Empire, goes up against the king of the south, right? Which is Ptolemy, Philopator, right? That's talking about, that's what all of Daniel chapter 11 is talking about. That's talking about something that happened in the past, all right? So that was a prophecy. That was, all of Daniel chapter 11 is a prophecy that took place during the times of the Maccabees, right? That's when all of that took place. So, back to 2 Maccabees chapter 6. I've got all these Edomites circling me. It's like it's like Satan has sent them out, boy. I'm telling you. It's like seriously, they're circling me like flies. I've been circled by these heathens, but mainly Edomites and Elam. So, back to this book of 2 Maccabees chapter 6, verse 4. It says, for the temple was filled with rioting and reveling by the Gentiles who dallied with harlots and had to do with with women within the circuit of the holy places, and besides that brought in things that were not lawful. All right, that's what it's talking about. Let's quickly mark it here. This is all referring to Daniel's 11, verse 31 to verse 36. All right. Let's quickly mark this here. 2 Maccabees chapter 6, verse 1, all the way down really to verse 16. Right. So, verse 5. So we're still in the book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 6, verse 5. It says the altar also was filled with the profane things which the law forbiddeth. Neither was it lawful for a man to keep Sabbath days or ancient feasts, or to profess himself at all to be a Jew. All right? It says, and in the day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices, and when the feast of Bacchus, which is one of the Greek kings, right, was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus carrying ivy. All right? It says, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighbor cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifice. Because Ptolemy, which was the king of the south, had controlled parts of Israel as well, while Antiochus was the king of the north, that he speaks about in Daniel's chapter 11. They controlled like northern Israel, a lot of the northern parts of Israel, while Ptolemy controlled a lot of the southern part of Israel, all right, during that time. So verse 7 says, so still in the book of Maccabees chapter 6, verse 7, it says, and in that day of the king's birth, every month they were brought by the bitter constraint to eat of the sacrifices, and when the feast of Bacchus was kept, the Jews were compelled to go in procession to Bacchus, giving ivy. All right? It says, moreover, there went out a decree to the neighboring cities of the heathen by the suggestion of Ptolemy against the Jews, that they should observe the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifices. All right? So they're telling them, the Israelites, that they've got to do the same fashions and be partakers of their sacrifice. This is what they're telling them. It says, and whoso would not conform themselves to the manners of the Gentiles should be put to, hear that? Should be put to death. Then might a man have seen the present misery. So when it says, and whoso could not conform themselves to the manner of the Gentiles, now it's talking about the actual Greeks, right? That would not conform. Who of the Israelites that would not take on and do the things that Antiochus had told them that they had to do by following the sacrifices, by not following the high holy days, by not observing the Sabbath, by not circumcising their kids. They couldn't do nothing like that, right? So it says here, for there were two women, right? Listen carefully. For there were two women brought who had circumcised their children, and whom, when they had openly led round about the city, hold on, and who then openly, and it says there were two women who had circumcised their children, whom they had openly led round about the city, all right? The babes hanging at the breast, they cast them down headlong from the wall. So they saw two Israelite women who was openly walking around the city of Jerusalem with their children, right? They were breastfeeding them, right? And the Greeks, the people that controlled Jerusalem back then, saw that they were circumcised. They took the babies from those two Israelite women and threw them over the wall, right? That's how deep it was in terms of them stop following, in terms of the Greeks imposing their Hellenistic ways on the Israelites, all right? So it says here, and others that had run together, it says, and others that had run together into caves nearby. So a lot of the Israelites had run up into the mountains, into the caves, to remove themselves from the city. That's where the Maccabees went. The Maccabees went and gathered Israelite men together, and that's how they started the insurgency, the guerrilla warfare, the fight back against Antiochus Epiphanes, because the Maccabeans had gathered men of the law who believed in the laws and said, come, we're going to go up into the mountains. And they started to gather different men from the two tribes that were there, Judah, Benjamin, and also Levi, right? And they were gathering, because remember, the Maccabees were Levites, right? They gathered them together to prepare them to go to war, to do a guerrilla warfare against Antiochus for all of the wickedness that they were seeing that they was imposing on his people, on the Israelites, right? It says here, verse 11, it says, and others that had run together into caves nearby to keep the Sabbath day secretly, you see, being discovered to Philip, were all burnt together, because they had made conscience to help themselves for the honor of the most sacred day, right? Which was the rest day, right? The seventh day, the Sabbath day, the seventh day of every full new moon is a rest day, is a Sabbath day, all right? It says, now I beseech those that read this book, that they be not discouraged from these calamities, but that they judge those punishments not to be a destruction, but for chastising of our nation. So even the elders of Israel understood that what was going on was also a chastisement for Israel that had gone off, because a lot of the Israelites had gone off anyway, right? Were doing things that they weren't meant to be doing. So I'm going to quickly read that. Where are we? Book of Second Maccabees, chapter 5. I'm going to read something out of here. Where was it? Sorry. It's our nation. Happy day. Where did I want to go to? So Second Ezra, sorry, I keep saying Second Ezra. The book of Second Maccabees, chapter 5, verse 23. It says, and at Gerizim, Andronicus, and besides Melanius, and Melanius was a Jew, just so you understand, he was an Israelite, Melanius, who worse than all the rest bared heavy hand over the citizens, having a malicious mind against his countrymen, the Jews, all right? Because Melanius was a Jew. He conspired with the Greeks, all right? He says, he sent also that detestable ringleader, Apollonius, with an army of 22,000, commanding him to slay all those that were in their best age, and to sell the women and the younger sort, who, coming to Jerusalem and pretending peace, did forbear till the holy day of the Sabbath, when taking the Jews, keeping the holy day. So he waited until the Sabbath, right? Apollonius, before he attacked the Israelites, because he knew that was our day of rest. That's the day that we don't draw arms, we don't do any work, right? That we give that day totally to the Lord, right? We don't cook any food, right? Anything that we make, we don't put it on fire, all right? So he waited until the Sabbath day, the rest day, Apollonius, before he attacked Jerusalem, all right? So it says, verse 25, so in the book of 2 Maccabees, chapter 5, verse 25, it says, who coming to Jerusalem and pretending peace did forbear till the holy day of the Sabbath, when taking the Jews, keeping the holy day, he commanded his men to arm themselves, and he slew all of them that were gone to the celebrating of the Sabbath, and running through the city with weapons, slew great multitudes. But Judas Maccabeus, right, with 9 others, and thereabout withdrew himself into the wilderness, right, and lived in the mountains after the manner of beasts with his company, who fed on herbs continually, lest they should be partakers of the pollution. So he fled into the mountains, and it tells you here when the Maccabees when they first got together. Where is it? For that. Hold on, I'll quickly show you, just so you understand. So the book of First Maccabees. This is when their father took their son. This is when the guerrilla warfare began. This is when the rebellion began with the Maccabees, right? And Israel, when they gathered the Israelites to take this war to Antiochus Epiphanes. So in the book of First Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 1, it says, in those days arose Matthias, the son of John, the son of Simeon, a priest of the sons of Jorab from Jerusalem, and dwelt in Modin, right? And he had 5 sons, right? Joanna called Cadius, Simon called Thasseus, Judas, who was called Maccabeus, Eleazar called Arian, and Jonathan, whose surname was Aphius. And when he saw the blasphemies that were committed in Judah and Jerusalem, listen carefully, he said, woe. So this is the father of the 5 sons, the 5 Maccabean sons. This is the father, Matthias. He says, woe is me. Wherefore was I born to see this misery of my people and of the holy city, and to dwell there when it was delivered into the hand of the enemy, and the sanctuary into the hand of strangers. It says, her temple is become as a man without glory. Her glorious vessels are carried away into captivity. Her infants are slain in the streets. Her young men with the sword of the enemy. What nation has not had a part in her kingdom and gotten of her spoils, right? All her ornaments are taken away. Of a free woman she is become a bond slave. Talking about Israel, the Israelites, right? It says, and behold, our sanctuary, even our beauty and our glory is laid waste. And the Gentiles, that is talking about the actual Greeks, have profaned it. To what end, therefore, shall we live any longer, right? Then it says, then Matthias, right, who was the father of the 5 sons of the 5 brothers of the Maccabees, right? Then Matthias and his sons rent their clothes and put on sackcloth and mourned very sore. In the meanwhile, the king of officers, such as compelled the people to revolt, came into the city Modane to make them sacrifice. And when many of Israel came unto them, Matthias also and his sons came together. Then answered the king's officers and said to Matthias, so this is Antiochus' officers, his generals, speaking to Matthias, speaking to the Israelites, right? And said to Matthias on this wise, thou art a ruler and an honorable and a great man in the city, and strengthened with sons and brethren. Now therefore come thou first and fulfill the king's commandment, like as all the heathen have done, yea, and the men of Judah also, right? And such as remain at Jerusalem, so shalt thou and thine house be in the number of the king's friends, and thou and thy children shall be honored with silver and gold and many rewards. So this is what the king's generals were saying to Matthias and his men, that they must come under the wing of King Antiochus and accept what he's doing to Israel, and the profaning of the temple, the destruction of their high holy days, right? The stopping them from following their laws, come on, that basically that he should follow them and become a heathen like those actual Greeks, right? So this is what Matthias answered them. This is Judas Maccabee's father, John's father, right? Simon's father, Judas's father, Eliezer's father. These are the 5 sons. This is what the father said, Matthias, right? Then Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice. So he's replying now to the king's officers, to King Antiochus' generals that were sent to bring them under the wings, to make them become heathens like the rest of the different towns that they were able to Hellenize under the Greeks, that these Greeks were able to Hellenize. He wanted to bring now Judas, who was based in Jerusalem, under King Antiochus' realm now, so he can become a heathen like them. So this is what Matthias replied. Then Matthias answered and spake with a loud voice, though all the nations that are under the king's dominion obey him and fall away every one from the religion of their fathers, right, and give consent to his commandments, yet will I and my sons and my brethren, right, walk in the covenant of our fathers. The Most High forbid that we should forsake the law and the ordinances. Simple as that. It says, we will not hearken to the king's words to go from our religion, either on the right or on the left. Now, when he had left speaking the words, there came one of the Jews in the sight of all to sacrifice on the altar which was at Modin according to the king's commandment, which thing when Matthias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him upon the altar. So these were some of the Israelites that had gone over to the Greeks, had become Hellenized, that was now taking up an abominable animal to put on the altar to sacrifice, either a pig, a swine, or whatever abominable animal it was that they couldn't eat. He was going to sacrifice on the altar. When Matthias saw that, he said his blood ran high. He said he couldn't withhold himself. He said he ran over immediately. He says, which, still in the book of, first book of Maccabees, chapter 2, verse 24, it says, which thing when Matthias saw, he was inflamed with zeal, and his reins trembled, neither could he forbear to show his anger according to judgment, wherefore he ran and slew him on the altar. So he slew him right there. So we go back to what the Gentiles that Paul was speaking to. These Gentiles that Paul is speaking to are, once again, Ephesians. We read the one in Ephesians, didn't we? Chapter 2, verse 11. So also you've got Galatians chapter 2. Did we go to that? Galatians chapter 2 verse 7. Just a couple precepts before we close it here. Galatians before Ephesians chapter 2. So Galatians chapter 2 verse 7. So it says, contrariwise, when they saw that the gospel of the uncircumcision was committed unto me, as the gospel of the circumcision was unto Peter, for he was wrought effectively in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision. The same was mighty in me towards the Gentiles. So Peter, it says there, for he was wrought effectively in Peter to the apostleship of the circumcision, because Peter was talking to the actual disciples themselves, like Peter, Matthew, Mark and Luke, were talking to Israelites that knew they were Israelites, but was letting them know that the Lord and Savior Yahushua, who they were walking with, is the Son of the Most High. He was spreading the word. They were doing the miracles, because remember, they were endowed by the Holy Spirit, and they were doing miracles alongside the Lord, and after the Lord died, they continued bringing the Lord's messages. But Paul was sent to who? That's what it says there. And the same was mighty in me towards the Gentiles. Paul was sent to the Gentiles. So those Gentiles here that Paul is speaking of are the Israelite Gentiles, the same ones that we read about in the book of Maccabees that were forcefully led and converted to become Gentiles. All right. Another precept here. We want Isaiah 61. The book of Isaiah, chapter 61. Hold on. A couple precepts we're going to pull out here before we close down, people. Isaiah 61, verse... Isaiah 61 verse 9. Start at verse 9. It says, and their seed, so we're in the book of Isaiah 61 verse 9, and their seed shall be known among the Gentiles, and their offsprings among the people, because our seed is among the Gentiles, right? All that see them shall acknowledge them, that they are the seed which Yahweh has blessed, right? Because we are mixed amongst the Gentiles. The Lord is coming to sift the house of Israel. Why? Because we are mixed amongst the Gentiles. Our seed shall be known amongst the Gentiles. How are we going to know that? It tells in the book of Romans 8 and 16. The spirit with our spirit. Let's just read it out. Romans 8 and 16. This is a way that we're going to know. It says, the book of Romans chapter 8 verse 16. It says, the spirit itself bears witness with our spirit that we are the children of the Most High. And if children, then heirs. Heirs, if so be that we suffer with him, that we may be also glorified together. So we know through the Spirit. That's why we also know by looking at secular history and looking at the prophecies of the Bible to see what happened to the Israelites, where they were scattered and so forth. We know that by the history, the secular history that we've read, and we know that also by the biblical history. So we read the book of Ezra, we read the book of Deuteronomy, Joel, and so forth and so on. So that's another way how we know, and also through the Spirit, all right? So it says here, so it's gone back to Isaiah 61, verse 10. It says, I will greatly rejoice in the Lord, my soul, the Lord, and my soul shall be joyful in my power. For he has clothed me with the garments of salvation. He has covered me with the robe of righteousness, as a bridegroom decketh himself with ornaments, and as a bride adorneth herself with jewels. For as the earth bringeth forth her bud, and as the garden causes the things that are sown in it to spring forth, so the Lord power will cause righteousness and praise to spring forth before all nations, because we are mixed amongst all nations. Just so you understand. So when we go to Hosea, this is what it says in the book of Hosea, and we can finish here probably in the book of Hosea, chapter 101. Hosea is the first book here, chapter 1, start at verse 9. So the book of Hosea chapter 1 verse 9, it says, Then said the Most High, call his name Lo Amin, for ye are not my people, and I will not be your power. Yet the number of the children of Israel, all right, shall be as the sand of the sea. Why? Because we're mixed amongst all the nations. We are the biggest nation on this planet Earth today, are the children of Israel. Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, West Indians and Caribbeans, African Americans, those that are descend from the transatlantic slave trade that live throughout the four corners of the world, that were scattered to the four corners of the world, the Native American Indians, the Marapuchus, the Aztecs, the Mayans, the Tanios, the Arawak Indians, the Simeon, the Gada Indians. Today, like I said, they call them Latinos, Hispanics, Puerto Ricans and Mexicans. Those are the children of Israel, and we are also mixed amongst other nations, right? We acknowledge that. So it says here, it says, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, because we are the greatest nation on this planet. We just don't know it, right? Which cannot be measured nor numbered. And it shall come to pass that in the place, right, in that place where it was said unto them, ye are not my people. Where is that place? That's everywhere. That's here in England, in the Americas, in the West Indies. The Native American Indians are being told that they're Native American Indians. The Mexicans have been told they're Mexicans, all right? The Latinos have been told they're Latinos. They're from Venezuela, Peru, Brazil, and so forth. In those places that we are being told that we are not, the people that they call the Jews are those Israelis, right? Those Eastern Europeans calling themselves Israelis. That's who the world says are the Jews, right? Everyone says, yeah, they're the Jews, but they are not the Jews. They are Eastern Europeans. They are not the Most High's children. They are not the children of the Almighty. They're not the lost sheep of the house of Israel. They're the found sheep, because everybody says they're the Jews, but they are not. So the scripture says, so the book of Hosea chapter 1 verse 10, yet the number of the children of Israel shall be as the sand of the sea, which cannot be measured nor numbered, right? And it shall come to pass that in the place, right, where it is said unto them, ye are not my people, that's everywhere that we are. They call us Jamaicans, West Indians, Caribbeans, Antiguans, African Americans. They call them Latinos, Hispanics, Mexicans, Puerto Ricans, Native American Indians. They have us all these names except who we are. The so-called white man, Esau Edom, refuses to give us our true title, our true heritage. Why? Because he knows who we are. The elite super elites know who we are, and they know that their end is near. They know that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning. So it says, in that place where it says unto them, ye are not my people, there it shall be said unto them, ye are the sons of the living power. Then shall the children of who? Of Judah and the children of Israel, so that's the northern kingdom, the southern kingdom, right? Shall be what? Shall be gathered together. Did that happen to those Israelis? Those Israelis weren't gathered together. They don't even recognize the 12 tribes. They call themselves Jews. They say they're Judah. Some of them may say they're Levi. They have no acknowledgement of the 12 tribes. There's no way on Yahweh Shimi Hawashai's planet. There's no way on the Most High's planet could those people in Israel today, those Eastern Europeans call themselves Israelis, be the children of God, be the Israelites. Because they gathered themselves together on trains and planes and automobiles and ships and brought themselves into the land of Israel based on the Balfour Treaty that was put together in 1923. Then after the Second World War, they used that as the reason to put them into the land. And they went there on boats and trains and planes and automobiles. They wasn't delivered there by the Lord. The Lord didn't come and gather them from the four corners of the world in his chariots, in what we call UFOs. He didn't come and judge and make war with the other nations when he did this and bring the kingdom of heaven to earth and put us in the promised land. From the great river Nile to the great river Euphrates. They don't occupy the actual promised land. They're only in the strip of the promised land, calling what they call Israel, these Israelis. And they share it with Palestinians, who are the Philistines, who go back to Cush, they're Hamites. They share it with another nation. They're not in the promised land. The promised land that was promised to Abraham starts from where? Starts from the great river Nile in Egypt all the way to the river Euphrates that runs through Iraq. They're not in there. There's different nations there. You've got Arabs living there. You've got Hamites, that Cushites that live in Egypt. You've got Arabs that live in Egypt as well, where the river Nile is. The actual promised land is occupied by many nations. And it's only going to be occupied by the children of Israel on that great day of deliverance. So you must understand and know that those people could never, ever be, in any form, shape, be God's chosen people, can be the Israelites. They are not. So it says there, verse 11. So we're still in the book of Hosea, chapter 1, verse 11. It says, then shall the children of Judah and the children of Israel be gathered together and appoint themselves one head, and they shall come up out of the land, for great shall be the day of Jezreel. And the one land that all the 12 tribes are is where? It's in the Americas. That's where all the 12 tribes are. And then you've got the rest of the different of the 12 tribes that are scattered across the four corners of the world. But all of the 12 tribes are in Israel today. Not Israel, sorry. Excuse me. Not Israel. In the Americas today. In the land of the North, North America. All the 12 tribes are there. So when we go to, and this is what the Lord says here in the book of Revelations, chapter 7. It says, Revelation chapter 7 verse 4, it says, and I heard the number of them which were sealed, and they were what? They were sealed 144,000 of all the tribes of the children of Israel. Judah, 12,000 from Judah, 12,000 from Reuben, 12,000 from Gad, 12,000 from Asher, 12,000 from Naphtali, 12,000 from Manasseh, 12,000 from Simeon, 12,000 from Levi, 12,000 from Issachar, 12,000 from Zebulun, 12,000 from Joseph, 12,000 from Benjamin. So the Gentiles that Paul went to, the Gentiles that the Bible speaks of, are Israelite Gentiles. He did not go to heathen Gentiles of the other nations. He went to Israelites that had been Hellenized, that had taken on customs, beliefs and worshippings of other nations. And the main nation that had taken our people, that had forcefully enforced their ways on our people, were the Greeks, and they called it Hellenization. All right, look it up, it's quite clear. Hellenization was the Hellenizing of the Israelites by these Jews. They didn't just Hellenize the Jews, they did Hellenize other nations as well, but we also were forcefully Hellenized by these people. That's why Matthias and his 5 sons, the Maccabees, took up arms against Antiochus Epiphanes. All right, simple as that. So on that note, I'm going to give all praises to Yahweh, Bahashim, Yahushai, Bahashim, Rakah, Kodash, Tawada, Amen. Shalom to the Akiyams out there. Shalom to the brothers and sisters out there. And I pray this was an edifying lesson to give you an understanding about who the Israelite Gentiles were and who Paul the Apostle went to. And through what we showed you in the book of Maccabees, you must understand that the Israelites, the so-called Jews, the Jews back in the days of the Romans, back in the days of Paul the Apostle, the ones that he went to, before he went to them, were taken over by Antiochus and were forcefully Hellenized. All right? All praises. I praise was an edifying lesson to the Akiyams out there. All praise and glory to the Father and Son. Shalom, Akayam. Shalom.